Peter, Peter, Peter. Last week went fairly well for him, as he recognized Christ to be the Messiah. But this week, once again, he's causing Christ consternation, and has been ever since ascension. So much so that Christ responds sternly, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me, for you're setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." And what did Peter do to occasion such a response? When Christ is sharing his story, when he's opening his heart and telling his disciples about the painful betrayals and the death that soon are to be visited upon him, Peter, rather than allowing his heart to ache in sympathy with Christ, burst out with, "God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you." In other words, I don't want to think about this. I prefer to believe that everything is going to be fine, so please stop talking, Christ. Peter speaks out of concern not for Christ primarily, but for himself, for his own comfort. He needs Christ to be successful in some worldly sense, so that he can attach his ego to the results. But God is not about such worldly results. Christ is not competing for the Rabbi of the Year award. He teaches us how to navigate the conflict between good and evil that we face every day in the world, so that we choose good, grow as human beings, and return to God better than when we arrived here. This path does not necessarily lead to worldly success. In fact, Christ was sentenced to capital punishment, which is not generally considered to be a mark of secular achievement. But Peter needs Christ to stand out, so that Peter will stand out by association. But the only way Christ stands out is in his unwillingness to pretend that things are other than they are. He stares reality in the face. And by doing so, he threatens Peter's ego identification, Peter's desire to be recognized as that close follower of one admired by all. And this unnerves Peter. "Stop speaking the truth, Christ. Let me enjoy this." In brief, Peter speaks as if he cares about Christ, but actually he's more concerned about his own appearance in the eyes of other people. He's not supporting Christ in his mission by being humble and realistic and present. He's essentially saying, "Stop speaking the truth. Otherwise I won't be able to feel subtly superior to others." So Christ understandably responds, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me, for you're setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Paul would say that Peter is focusing on the flesh rather than on the spirit. And remember, that's his distinction. And these days we might say that he's focusing on ego rather than on God, who calls us to an honest, unsentimental reckoning with reality, to face truth head on, to acknowledge evil and to refuse to participate in it. As Christ says, those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? In other words, if we strive to look good, then we lose sight of our relationship with God. What does life look like then when we cast off appearances and we devote ourselves to truth, to God? Well, Paul gives us direction. As he writes to the Romans, "Let love be genuine." That sounds easy enough, right? No surprise there. But then we see that Peter's love was actually more for himself than for Christ. It was not fully genuine. Thus, when Peter's faith was tested, it proved lacking. He sank into the Sea of Galilee. He denied Christ. When love is genuine, it starts with what is, not with what we wish were the case. Neither about ourselves, nor about the world around us. Many people spend so much energy cultivating a positive reputation that they lose themselves. And when we lose ourselves, our love cannot be genuine. Others live in a world of pretense. Like this year, unlike every other year in memory, Uncle Dave is not going to get drunk and ruin Christmas. No meaningful relationship comes from such fantasy. Genuine love starts with the truth, no matter how painful. We then build on that truth whatever it might allow. If we're talking about Uncle Dave, then maybe no meaningful relationship is possible right now. We have to start with the truth. Paul also admonishes us to hate what is evil. Again, we're like, well, of course, and that's easy, right? We all hate what's evil. It might seem obvious, but it's not so often practiced, I don't feel, in our postmodern I don't judge culture. If we don't judge, then how can we discern good from evil? We know in our hearts, I would say, what is good and what is bad, but we just manage to avoid acknowledging it when convenient by heaping on ideologies and rationalizations and getting lost in our thoughts. When we get lost in our thinking so much, sometimes we even lose an awareness that we have a heart. There are those people who even manage to devote themselves to hate and call it good. They're trapped in their ideas, but no excuses can be made for a hateful ideology. Paul further indicates that we are to compete in how much honor we show. Remember that word? Honor? I feel like few people use it these days outside of Veterans Day and Memorial Day. We have these like special times and we suddenly remember that honor is important. And otherwise we don't talk about it very much. I wonder how many parents still use this term in rearing their children, who encourage them to be mindful of honor. It seems to me that integrity in one's belief and actions is no longer a focus of child rearing. It's been replaced by what is expedient as an attempt to engineer children who will secure worldly success. So much focuses on that, we forget about things like honor. What matters is the mastery of techniques for getting by in the world, not personal integrity. We learn to seek admiration rather than respect. Paul encourages us to rejoice in hope, to be patient in suffering, and to persevere in prayer. But we can only accomplish this when we realize that we can fulfill our purpose here on earth despite all of these problems, despite all the suffering caused by others. We can learn what we need to learn regardless of other people's behavior, something the martyrs knew well. When we realize this, then our patience when we are suffering increases a little bit. Not that we should just say, I'm glad I'm suffering. I don't understand that attitude, but at least we can be more patient with it. And we can persevere in prayer, persevere in relating to God, which that's what prayer is. I mean, sometimes we use words, but prayer is just relating to God. We cannot allow others to steal our hope in God, to undermine our relationship to God. We can be mindful of our relationship with God in times that are good, but also in times that are bad. Paul writes that we are to rejoice with those who rejoice and to weep with those who weep. And this is something that Peter had yet to learn as he refused to share Christ's heartbreak over the coming betrayal. So our purpose here is not to impress other people, here on earth I mean, not to imagine a world that is more gratifying than it is. We're here to learn about love and truth, to recognize the importance of honor and integrity, to take those lessons back with us when we return to God. Amen.